Hello everyone. Thank you all for watching the video. Wishing you all good health and peace. The dawn slipped over the mountains, its light a soft murmur, weaving through mist that clung to the hills like a breath held in silence. Ly Tieu Ca rose, her movements quiet in the morning's chill, as roosters crowed, their calls sharp against the hush of a world stirring. She stepped onto the packed dirt of their bamboo house, its walls etched with years of rain and resilience, and knelt by the hearth, her hands roughened by labor, feeding twigs to the fire. The flames flickered, casting shadows like unspoken fears, and a pot of rice porridge simmered, its steam a quiet vow for her daughter Han, who slept still, her small form curled under a quilt, her breath a gentle rhythm. Beyond the yard, the grapefruit grove waited, its fruit heavy with promise, and Ly Tieu Ca's heart trembled, as if the day held secrets it might unravel. Their home perched on a slope, a frail shelter of bamboo and thatch, cradled by the mountain's embrace. The yard was a patchwork of life. A grapefruit grove where fruit gleamed in the dawn, a vegetable patch curling toward the sun, a small coop where chickens clucked softly. Each morning Ly Tieu Ca tended the grove, her hands steady as she plucked fruit or fed Han, her tiny hands eager for the day's warmth. Today, Han was with her grandmother, her giggles a distant echo down the trail, and Ly Tieu Ca climbed the hill to the grove, her basket slung over her shoulder, her steps sure despite the ache in her bones. Tien, her husband, was already gone, his motorbike's hum fading toward the wood workshop, where he sorted boards, 2,000 A's, 100 B's, he'd said, his voice clipped. The hope of his wages warmed her once, but now a shadow lingered. His late returns, his curt words, whispers of another woman. Her heart wavered, torn between love and a fear she couldn't name, as if the mountain held truths it wouldn't share. The grove was cool, the air thick with the scent of citrus and earth, the stream's murmur faint beyond the trees. Ly Tieu Ca reached for a grapefruit, its skin taut and golden, its weight heavy in her palm. "Ripe," she murmured, her voice soft, a smile flickering as she sliced it, the juice sharp on her fingers. She climbed higher, drawn to a tree laden with fruit, their surfaces catching the light like small suns. She plucked one, its sweetness bursting on her tongue, a moment of joy that felt like grace. She sat on a rock, its surface smooth under her hands, the valley sprawling below, the stream glinting like a silver thread. The fruit's tang lingered, a reminder of small triumphs, but her thoughts drifted to Tien, to his work, his promises, the life they were building. The grove was theirs, a dream carved from stubborn earth, but his distance pressed, heavy as the dew that clung to the leaves. The sun climbed, its warmth piercing the mist, casting golden threads across the grove. Ly Tieu Ca paused, her hands resting on the basket, her eyes tracing the hills, where the workshop stood, its smoke a faint smudge against the sky. She thought of Han, her laughter a spark that lit the dimmest days, and of Tien, his hands steady at the workshop, sorting boards, his voice once bright with hope, a raise if he worked hard, a future beyond the mountain's grip. But the neighbors' whispers lingered. A woman seen with him, her laughter shared in ways that cut. She pushed the thought away, her hands tightening on the basket, her steps quickening down the trail, the fruit heavy against her back, each one a vow of coins at market. Back at the house, Ly Tieu Ca sorted the grapefruit, her hands deft, her thoughts a tangle of hope and dread. Han returned, her grandmother's hand guiding her, her small feet kicking dust, her chatter a melody that softened the air. "Mama, fruit!" she called, her eyes bright, her hands reaching for a grapefruit. Ly Tieu Ca knelt, her smile warm, her fingers peeling the fruit, its scent sharp in the air. "For you," she said, offering a piece, Han's giggle a spark as she ate, juice dripping down her chin. The sweetness spread in Ly Tieu Ca's chest, a surprise that felt like grace, and she laughed, the sound rare and bright, a moment of joy amid the labor. Her grandmother nodded, her eyes kind, her voice low. "She's your strength." Ly Tieu Ca's throat tightened, her hand brushing Han's hair, her heart catching at the thought of her daughter's future, of the life they were building, of Tien's role in it. The morning deepened and Ly Tieu Ca moved to the yard, her hands scattering grain for the chickens, their soft forms darting in the dust. Han trailed her, her small hands tossing grain in clumsy arcs, her chatter a spark that lit the air. Ly Tieu Ca watched, her smile softening, but her eyes carried shadows, memories of lean years, of Han's cries unanswered, of nights when the mountain felt too vast. She thought of Tien, his motorbike parked at the workshop, his attempt to sell a friend's green bike, 5 million dong, He'd hoped, but the buyer demanded papers, a deal left hanging. She'd urged him to rest, her hands hovering by the hearth, but he'd waved her off, his voice curt. Just work, he'd said, his eyes avoiding hers, and she'd stood silent, her heart a stone as he rode away, the dust settling like doubt in her chest. The day waned, the sun climbing higher, casting long shadows over the hills. Ly Tieu Ca prepared for the market, her basket heavy with grapefruit, the trail slick with dust, the heat pressing against her skin. The stalls hummed, voices calling, the air thick with spice and smoke, the scent of grilled corn mingling with herbs. She spread her mat, her fruit gleaming, her voice steady. Fresh grapefruit, 100,000 dong, she called, her smile practiced, her eyes scanning the crowd. Customers came, their hands sorting fruit, their coins heavy in her palm, and she felt a spark of joy, a small triumph in the day's labor. The market was crowded, the bustle a balm, and she sold quickly, the coins a promise of rice, cloth, a future for Han. But as she packed her mat, her legs ached, the basket heavy, and the trail home loomed long. A shadow approached, Hung, a man she'd met before, his eyes kind, his voice warm. Tieu Ca, he said, his hand steady on the wheel of a pickup truck, its paint gleaming in the dusk. You're carrying too much. She hesitated, her fingers brushing the basket, the weight of his kindness heavy. I'm used to walking, she said, but her voice wavered, and Hung's smile was gentle. Let me help, he said, his presence a lifeline, and she nodded, climbing into the truck, the seatbelt unfamiliar, the road winding through hills, the stream glinting in the fading light. Hung spoke, his words a bridge, stories of his brother's projects, fields measured, plans to build something new in the valley. Ly Tieu Ca listened, her heart easing, but the weight of a sin's absence lingered, a shadow that grew with the dusk. The truck slowed near the village, the air cool, the stars sharp against the dark. But a motorbike's hum cut through, and a sin appeared, his face tense, his eyes fierce. Tieu Ca, he called, his voice sharp, his hands gripping the handlebars. Why are you with him? Ly Tieu Ca froze, her basket slipping, her heart a storm. Hung stepped out, his voice calm. I'm just helping, he said, but a sin's jaw tightened, his words a blade. My wife, he said, his eyes burning. You're taking care of her while I'm working. I saw you with that woman, Tieu Ca. The car I bought, you let her ride. Ly Tieu Ca's breath caught, her hands trembling, her voice low. Your woman, she said, her eyes fierce. 2 years I waited, a sin. You left me for her. The air crackled, their words a wound, and Hung stepped between, his voice steady. Enough, he said, his hand on Ly Tieu Ca's arm. She's tired. I'm taking her home. A sin's face crumpled, his voice breaking. Tieu Ca, I'm your husband, he said, but she turned, her eyes burning with tears she wouldn't shed. Not anymore, she said, her voice steady, her hands shaking. Go to her. Me and Han don't need you. Hung guided her to the truck, his presence a shield, and a sin stood, his motorbike idling, his words lost in the night's hush. The truck pulled away, the village nearing, and Ly Tieu Ca's heart ached. A shard of glass, her thoughts a tangle of love and pain. Hung's voice was soft, his eyes kind. You're stronger than this, he said, and she nodded, her fingers tracing the basket's rim. The fruit's weight a reminder of what she could carry. They stopped at a blue sign, the bamboo house glowing, its hearth a beacon. Ly Tieu Ca stepped out, her basket lighter, her heart heavier. Thank you, she said, her voice soft, the night's chill brushing her skin like a memory. Hung nodded, his truck fading into the dusk, and she walked the trail, the air thick with the scent of earth and citrus. Han ran to her, her small hands eager, her chatter a spark. Mama home, she called, her eyes bright, and Ly Tieu Ca knelt, her smile warm, her heart catching at the weight of her daughter's trust. Inside, the hearth glowed, its warmth a contrast to the chill in her chest. She fed Han, her small hands eager, her chatter a spark in the quiet. Her grandmother watched, her eyes kind but heavy, her voice low. Men falter, she said, her hands slicing greens, their scent sharp on the air. I raised your mother alone. You can do this. Ly Tieu Ca nodded, her fingers tracing the bowl's rim, the clay cool against her skin. She thought of a sin, his hands steady at the workshop, 2,000 boards sorted, a raise promised, a future he'd vowed to build. She thought of the woman, her laughter a blade she hadn't seen, and of Hung, his kindness a light that both warmed and unsettled her, a vow tested by a moment's choice. She thought of Han, her laughter a spark that both anchored and unraveled her, a dream both fierce and frail. They ate, rice and greens warmed by the hearth, Han nestled between her and her grandmother, her giggles a spark in the quiet. Ly Tieu Ca's thoughts turned inward, a tangle of love and pain. She thought of the workshop where a sin worked, his absence a void that echoed in the village's whispers. She thought of their years together, the nights when hunger was a shadow, the days when Han's birth was a joy unmarred by the world's judgment. The evening deepened, the fire's glow casting shadows across the room, the bamboo walls softening in the light. Ly Tieu Ca cleared the bowls, her hands steady, the clink of clay a rhythm in the quiet. Han slept, her breath soft, her small form curled on a mat, her laughter a memory that lingered. Her grandmother hummed, her hands folding a quilt, her presence a steady anchor. Ly Tieu Ca stepped outside, the air cool, the stars sharp against the dark, their light a map of questions without answers. The mountain loomed, its silence vast, the valley hidden beyond its folds, the stream's murmur a faint lullaby. She gazed down the path the sin had ridden, the dust untouched, her heart a fragile bridge between love and betrayal. She lingered, the scent of grapefruit and earth wrapping her, the night's chill brushing her skin like a memory. She thought of the grove, its fruit a seed of their future, the chickens growing strong, the coins from the market a vow of resilience. She thought of their dreams, small but stubborn, like roots breaking stone, and of a sin, his hand steady, his heart hers, yet touched by a shadow she couldn't forgive. She thought of Hung, his truck a fleeting refuge, his words a spark that stirred both hope and fear, a choice she hadn't sought. She thought of Han, her daughter's future a dream both fierce and frail, and of herself, a woman who'd carried love through years of want, now standing on the edge of a truth that burned. The stars held no answers, only light, and Ly Tieu Ca let the stillness hold her, a breath before dawn's demands. Tomorrow she'd rise, tend the grove, feed Han, walk to market, her steps sure despite the weight. Han would laugh, chasing chicks or clutching fruit, her voice a melody that softened the yard's edges. A sin might return, his hands empty, his eyes heavy with truths she couldn't hear. Hung might pass again, his kindness a question she couldn't answer. The coins from the market would carry them, a path to a future unwritten, a chance to outrun the shadow of betrayal. The grove would yield, its fruit a vow of resilience, and Han's laughter would light the dimmest days. But in her soul a question lingered, delicate as moonlight. Would Hung's help reshape her path, or would a sin's strife break her family, leaving her to raise Han alone under the mountain's gaze? Somewhere in the valley's hush, their future waited, and here on the mountain, her family breathed, a fragile circle of love and pain, its edges softened by a sky too vast to promise forever.